Hi friends, I'll just give social media a time to let you guys know that I'm online. It takes a little bit of time, so I'll stay here with you guys for a minute. My name is Gloria Medrano from Heart of the City San Diego. Heart of the City San Diego is a non-profit organization. It's also a podcast, so you can go check it out. Go to the link in my bio and go check out some of the stuff that I do or have done. You might like it. It might be helpful. I talk a lot about emotional healing. And love to see people walk through difficulty. I'm always working in that area, helping people. And lately on YouTube, we've been on a little journey in emotional healing, and I've been teaching on some ways to heal and ways to deal with people that are difficult. Also, it's a lot of thinking about yourself. We talked about compensating behaviors recently, and then I gave you guys some homework over on YouTube, and the homework was to spot out some of the ways that you might compensate, right? Here's a little some of the little things that we talked about, and it was here's some questions. What behaviors and attitudes do you use to compensate for your pain or insecurity, right? And how have the above behaviors and attitudes affected your relationship with God, right? So I do talk about God all the time because, well, I'm a minister. That's what I do. I'm Pastor Gloria, and I'm also a chaplain here in San Diego. And so I do a lot of different things, volunteer work all over the city and stuff. And I work a lot with, hey, Mr. Butler, what's up? Viewing in from London. And so yeah, I do a lot of things. We talked a lot about insanity. What is insanity? Insanity is trying to get a result, a different result, but you do the same thing over and over and over again. That's insanity, right? So sometimes we're like, we're just in our head, and we think these thoughts like, why can't this change? Why can't this change? Why can't this change? But then we don't do anything to make a change. And so the only person that can be controlled, or that you can control, is yourself, right? So we can only control our own selves. We can't control anyone else. We can't make them do something. We can't manipulate them to do something. We can only work on ourselves. And when we make changes, it will infect other people, okay? And we want to make good changes to cause an snowball effect that is good towards other people, right? So we talked about compensations, and then in the next lessons, if you can find all of those on YouTube, we talked about are you ready, willing, and able? Basically, are you ready, willing, and able to go forward, to make those changes? Are you ready to be challenged? Are you ready to make the insanity stop, right? And the insanity stops by you doing something different, totally different, right? And so you can do it. We all can do it. It's more simple than what we imagine it to be in our heads. A lot of times people say, "Oh, you got to forgive people. You got to forgive people." Forgiving people is easy. It's just a decision that you make. You make up your mind, and you let go of all of the control. You let go of all of trying to control the other person that you need to forgive, and it makes you feel better. Basically, you just decide, I'm just going to live humbly. If they are having an attitude and they haven't made changes, I'm not going to react to it. I'm just going to let it roll off my shoulder. I'm going to forgive them. I'm going to let them, the consequences to their lives will come on its own because of their own lifestyle, and let those consequences happen in the way that they were going to happen, right? Now, if you love that person, of course you don't want bad consequences to happen to them, right? You want to forgive them, and you want changes in a good way to happen. So that comes through prayer, that comes through reading, that comes through making good, positive choices in your own life. And so I just realized I don't have my reading glasses. These are my driving glasses. And so I'm looking at these. I'm trying to read some scriptures here. And I'm like, wait a minute, I can't see that. I could see the bigger letters. So yeah, that's kind of like what I do. I talk a lot about different things. We're going to get more into that, compensating behaviors, on YouTube. We're going to talk about how to make changes. And here's a little something that I do want to read, that I can actually read with these glasses. And it says here, it says, what is God's part in our lives, right? So we talk a lot about the stepping into growth, stepping into making changes in our lives for the better. It could start with something simple, by making a decision that today I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop whatever that is, right? I'm going to stop hating. I'm going to stop smoking. I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to stop behaviors that are not producing any kind of positive results, right? We want positive results because we want to, for me, I want to have a better world, if that can even ever happen. But we can have a better sphere of, we can have it better with the sphere of influence that we have, which is grandchildren, children, and whoever else is in your immediate life, right? Or co-workers, people like that. You have an influence over people, right? Many of you I know, many of you I've worked alongside of in England, and here in San Diego, where I'm from, and I know, I understand the lifestyles. I understand the cultures between mines and England and people that I worked with, even in the East End, where it is really rough. Places like Canning Town, I've met people that have, worked with criminals, like the Cray twins, and people who, have worked directly with them, been in that part of their world, in what things that they did and stuff. I'm not going to say what they did, but you know, and God has healed many of them. Many of them are preaching the gospel to this day right now. So we have a part, and our part is to forgive. Our part is to love. You know, our part is to walk in the fullness of Christ. That means, reading His Word, knowing His Word. So many different things that means. But what is God's part, right? And here's something I want to read to you. It says, a funny thing humans tend to do is try to do for ourselves and others what God has promised to do for us. God has created us as responsible, intelligent beings. Thus, we have a part in our relationship with Him. But if we stuck to our part and let God do His, we would probably experience much more joy and peace in our lives. Let's take a look at God's part. I don't know about you, but I want joy and peace in my life and in my family's life, okay? Here's God's part. God inspires us. God forgives us. He gave us His Word. He gives us insight. He encourages us. He heals us. He gives us strength. He never leaves us. He guides us and directs us. He sent His Son to die for us. And here's a little bit of our part, which is very tiny. And our part is let God into our life. To let God come into our life. Love Him and others. Give up our sin with His help. Follow His principles. Confess our sins. Forgive others and ourselves. Replace our old behavior with new ones. Right our mistakes. Connect with Him and others daily. Here's the question that I want to share with you is, what are some insights you've gained from looking at God's part and our part? And you can go back and listen to this later and see how you feel about that. One of my favorite scriptures is Isaiah 41:10. That's my, that is my, everybody who's a Christian, we all have, us Christians out here. I am kind of silly sometimes. But we do have our favorite scriptures, right? The one that God Himself has spoken to us, right? And we get very very selfish with this, our scripture. Mine is Isaiah 41:10. Yes, I have one too. Isaiah 41:10 is found in the Bible. And it says this, Isaiah 41:10 is, so do not fear. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. That is very near and dear to my heart. Do not fear, because everything in my life since I was a little girl had to do and was centered around fear. It had to do with fear. And all of the things that I have walked through in my lifetime had to do with overcoming fear, which when you walk through or face things that are very fearful or you're afraid of, and you feel all afraid, but you're still walking through it, you're still facing it, this is called courage. For some of you tough people out there, you don't know tough until you have become a Christian and you have faced some things in life. Okay? And the honest truth here is that we, whether you believe it or not, we in this world are in a fight. Okay? I grew up in a world where people fought. Okay? Physically. I grew up, I was never in the gangs. I was just a good girl, but I was surrounded by it. Okay? I did become a competitive boxer, just amateur, and just, I did some competition, but like many of the kids that grew up in my neighborhood, we were in fights and street fights and things, even girls, and it wasn't in my nature to be like that, but I had to. I was forced in it, and it was very fearful, very scary, to be confronted by 5 people and they're going to jump you, they're going to come after you and beat you up. That's very, very scary. And so to have to try to defend yourself, it's very scary. But when I gave my life to Christ, I faced other types of scary. I faced myself, okay? I faced the things that I hate. I faced people that I hated, right? I chose to love them. I chose to forgive them, right? I never ask people to put themselves in the space of danger or anything like that. That's not what I'm asking. But I chose to forgive people that hurt me. They hurt me deeply. And I let it go. I just let them go. I let it go, and sometimes you got to let them go too. And sometimes you can reconcile. Sometimes you can reconcile with, if the other person has made some changes and, they're actively working on change and they want to reconcile, you can reconcile. But God always tells us to forgive. Let it go. Leave whatever repercussions or things that need to be taken care of, leave it to Him. You are courageous. God has given us not the ability to cower down. God has given us the ability to stand and face. Okay? It's about standing and facing. Standing and facing all of the obstacles that life has to bring with us. Sober minded. And trusting in Him. Because if God's got your back, nothing else matters. Okay? People can hate on you all they want. People have issues. Okay? People at work have issues. People on the streets have issues. People come with their own little things that they do and issues, hang-ups, and insecurities that they come with. Okay? Trying to navigate titles and positions. I've seen it all. I have seen it all. Okay? I've been, in leadership positions for about 30 years now, 36 years, something like that. and have seen all different people and how they are and act and things that they do, and but nonetheless, and even myself have had to learn through different titles and things, and how do I the way that I act when I have a title, and if I don't have a title. So now I'm at the age where I don't care. Nothing impresses me, right? I'm at the age where nothing impresses me. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care what title you have. I don't care who you are. What I care about is how you are, how much you love God, and how you treat people. Okay? And what I've come to understand and learn is not just how people treat people or how people make people feel, because that's just shallow, but the reason why. What is the why behind how you are? What, is it out of character? Some of the things that you do, right? Because some people can be the best people ever, but pushed to a certain point, and an unreasonable point, they're going to come out of character. Okay, so there are reasons why people are, and some people are just they have a bad character. It's consistent. Okay, so you gotta navigate what is happening at that time in that person's life, in the way that they may be acting or behaving or whatever. So I deal a lot with that kind of thing because I do emotional healing, right? So I do a lot of that. And it's all in a matter of listening. One person that I really was impressed with was one of my supervisors, and not a supervisor, but one of the bosses. And he was a very kind-hearted man, and he had this knack for never responding emotionally. And because in the jobs that I've done, they're very high level, stress, and very intense, with the working alongside of emergency services and things like that. It's very intense, and so you're very much intense all the time. And so you're dealing with all the different attitudes and issues and hang-ups, and you have to make quick critical decisions, and sometimes you may not make a good decision. Sometimes you make good decisions, sometimes you don't. But I have to do quick critical decisions all the time. So I'm very much like in a fight all the time. So this one boss was very kind and very able to not become emotional, and understand that the consistency of who I was very calm and able to make quick critical decisions. Every once in a while, I would get very intense and make a quick critical decision, and not be able to not have the time to explain why I made that decision, and it sometimes comes across rude. It is what it is. Because I don't have the time to explain. I have to make it quick because someone's life is in jeopardy. So he would come back and he would say, he would ask a question. Instead of saying, hey, you were like this or you were like that, he would say, he didn't fight fire with fire. Basically, he would say, why did you make that decision? Can you tell me? Like, calmly. And then at an appropriate time, I was be able to explain why I made that decision and in the attitude that I made it with, right? And he would say, oh, I understand now, right? And so he would say, just don't worry, just calm down, chill out. And I'm very chill. I'm very chill and easygoing. And so, he make it a little light because it's intense. And so, he kind of knew what he was doing. I appreciate that, right? Not everybody is going to be like that. You're not going to always have a boss that is like that, right? You're going to have all kinds of different types of people. So, it is difficult to navigate all the different people and personalities, but you can certainly do it. You can certainly do it, and God enables us to. So when I talk about facing your fear and facing life, like in my favorite scriptures, Isaiah 41:10, and I read that to you guys, I'm not talking about getting into a fist fight or any of those things. I'm talking about dealing with pressures of life that sometimes are very fearful pressures, and things that we can't control. And you're very afraid sometimes. But when we walk through it and we stand and face, because I'm a very stand and face kind of a person, when we stand and face, you guys, that's called courage. And God gives us even more courage, and because he's walking with us, and we have the Holy Spirit that lives in us if we ask Jesus to come into our heart, ask him to forgive us of our sins, and allow him to be, and believe that he died and rose again, right? That he's the mediator, that he is the only way to go to God, right? The only way. And through that, Holy Spirit guides us, gives us peace, gives us joy, gives us wisdom beyond our years, through his word as well, helps us to discern deeply, helps us to discern behaviors and people and circumstances, and even helps us to discern demonic situations, right, that are not of God, that really are not of God. You will come excuse me, you will face situations that come with you from your background. Some in England, a lot of people don't understand. There's a very deep, dark culture there. There are witches, true witches, warlocks, and there are cults, and there are people that are practicing, just like in other parts of the world as well. Here in California too, Latino cultures have it as well, where, excuse me, allergies, some things are not of God. And so God gives us the discernment to know, is it just someone's personality, or is there something really different that is something that is a more of an assault instead of a regular, personality clash, right? And that comes from knowing his word. That comes from, believing that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light, and having discernment over darkness and evil and things, right? So God gives us authority over those things too, and knowing your authority in that, right? So, God gives us the gentleness, the meekness. I went back and I was talking about how, nothing, like, I'm not impressed with money or status or titles and all those things. Or, if you're a movie star or not, or what, I don't really get starstruck you know, for some people I get really excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, especially athletes, you know. I get really excited because I'm like, you know, I know what they can do, you know. And so, but I don't feel like, you know, I'm less than or better than either. But but that comes with the age and the, you know, the amount of work I've done, you know, things that I've done in life, and that comes with that, right? When you get to a certain place in life, you just like, you're not impressed with things. There are only a few things that I get impressed with. Again, I shared this with you before, and that is, you know, people who are humble. I'm really impressed with people who are humble. I had this other boss. He was the CEO, and he was the CEO of Maxwell Corporation. And he was the CEO at a time when I worked there, and he would go to everybody, from the janitor to the highest associate there, right? And he treated everyone equally, and he wanted to know about you personally, and he remembered everyone's name, which is very impressive to me. And you know, because I've been around so many high status people, so I seen the biggest jerks and the most humble people who truly were powerful, but they were the humble people. They didn't have to puff themselves up, you know, because they knew who they were. And then, you know, they didn't have to, you know, make people jump. People already did, because they respected him. And he earned the respect because he wanted to know about your personal life, and he cared. And so in that caring about people, it made people respect him. Like they liked him because of that. And I met him because I was working there, and I was in the coffee. I was getting a coffee, and I had nothing to do with him. I didn't work. He worked in another part of the department. He just was going around and meeting everyone and getting to know people. And so I just was getting the coffee, and he walked in, and I knew who he was, and it just so happened that it was just him and me, and I was like, oh my God, what do I do? You know? And so I said, oh, I'm getting the coffee. Would you like a coffee? And he goes, well, I sure would. And so I said, okay, so which one would you like? And so, you know, we talked and stuff, and I got him his coffee and made his coffee and things. And he was talking to me, and he was saying, I asked him a question about him, because I do that as well. I like to know. I learned about, you know, getting to know people as well, and so I know how to do that. But he turned it around on me and asked me. He said, so I want to know, and he stood all like this, I want to know about you. So tell me, you know, how long have you worked here, and, you know, blah, 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 right? And so I said, oh, I told him and stuff, and he said, oh, how many, do you have children? And I said, yes. And he says, what, you know, I have a question for you. And then he started to ask me these really thought-provoking questions, which I love that. I love that. And so he said questions like, how many employees do you think this company has? And I was like, I don't know that question, right? So he said, I'm going to come back next week and I'm going to ask you. And so I said, okay. And I just loved it, right? Because that meant that he was interested in, not only he was interested in his company, of course, but also he was challenging me and interested in coming back to finding out that information from me personally, right? So that made me feel a part of the team. Do you get it? That didn't make me feel like, excluded, or devalued, or, bluntly just shut out, it made me feel included and a part and important and valued. Do you get it? So he knew what he was doing, and I was learning something as well. And he knew I was learning something, and I was taking this in. So he then came back, and I said, okay, I found out, I researched, blah, blah, blah. And I also had his coffee ready, ready and sorted out for him as well, which he was impressed. That impressed him. That little thing right there impressed him. And so he goes, oh. And so he was happy about that. And then the next thing was, since we're talking by the coffee machine and coffee and all of the things here that are, have to do with coffee, he said, he asked me, he goes, so what do you think is everyone's favorite coffee? Do you have an eye out for that, right? And I was like, I'm thinking to myself, I don't think I ever noticed that. But he did. And so I just guessed. I just took a wild guess, right? Because I'm like, well, this is the coffee that I drink. I like. And he goes, and he gave me the name of the coffee and how many boxes it goes through and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, so he was teaching me something and including me. Now he's valuing me. So I was like, I'm really liking this because I'm feeling a part of the team, right? So he comes back the next day and I've got his coffee ready, and now I know what people's favorite coffee is and how many boxes are moved of that coffee. And so he's like, so he goes, he comes back and this time he's not so happy. He's a little quiet and a little bit now to himself. And I go, so we talk and we're talking, following up on the coffee thing. And then he says, I said, how is everything doing today? How's everything going in the family and things like that? And then he said, well, it looks like I'm going